So, I want to talk about what's been going on with Evil Dead and why I'm so disappointed in the way it's been going. First off, let's just talk about how long it's taken to get any sort of real announcement from the developers. It's taken almost just about 4 months to see anything happen from the devs. We got one little communication in December that basically said we have MMR and that they sometimes listen to feedback. What they said in December was the most generic, terrible thing that I have ever read from a developer's note. All it said is that MMR was in place. It didn't explain how it worked, when it was implemented, and why we weren't told. But the MMR system also sucked because it was implemented directly after when all those new players came in from Epic. It was put out after, and it was about a week after it was put in, I believe. And by that point, all the new players who would have benefited and probably stayed had that been added earlier, left. They left because they just got slammed. They got rolled over every game. And that was such a terrible throw from the company because a lot of people say that Evil Dead is more of a niche market, which I don't totally believe that, but I do agree that it's not like... It's obviously not going to be as big as Dead by Daylight because it only has one big name behind it. So the fact that they lost all these new players was a horrible blow for the community. And that's the first big mistake the devs made, is by losing all those new players by adding MMR too late. They should have just held off on that release date for when it was free on Epic until MMR was out. I don't know why they did that, because it honestly just killed any chance of those players joining if they didn't already, they were going to stay no matter what. Nextly, let's talk about what's plaguing us right now. There has been zero content for 4 months. It just got announced that Ruby is going to be added to the game. One character got announced that she was going to be added to the game. And I'm really disappointed that it took 4 months for one character to be announced. Because we saw multiple characters come out so quickly at the beginning of its life cycle, Evil Dead. And that tells us that it's not that hard for the studio to get this out. I mean, a lot of people try to excuse and say they're a small studio. Well, it's still possible for them to be able to do this. You can't just say that because they can still do it. The problem is that they didn't. If we look at most other games around this point, let's use Rainbow Six Siege as an example. Even when it was still a relatively smaller game, I'll admit, Ubisoft is a bigger studio. But even when it was a smaller game around this time, they were still getting out 2 characters in a new map every 90 days, along with a mid-season patch. We don't see that at all. Instead, we got few characters and only one demon, which is insane. Imagine if Dead by Daylight just only added survivors. That game would get so stale. And I'm really disappointed they haven't added another demon yet, and the first thing they reveal is a survivor. And don't even get me wrong, I am a majority survivor player, but the demon community has been so starved, I just can't believe that they would do that. Back to the main point I was adding. They haven't released anything new in so long that the game has just died. The game has such a small player base at this point because of this lack of interaction from the from the devs with the community, along with a lack of updates and balance changes. The biggest problem right now is that Demon is so terrible to play. It is so bad to play right now. And I know people are going to disagree and say it's not that bad. Even when you win, it's not fun. And it's just not good for the game. It's bad. So, and the demons need survivors and survivors need demons. So when all the demon players leave, that means survivor players are going to be leaving. And it's just culminated in the player base just decreasing massively. I'm probably one of the biggest Evil Dead fans in existence. I'm probably the hugest Evil Dead fan you will ever hear of. I basically worship the guy. Everyone around me knows what Evil Dead is because of me, because I always talk about it. And the fact that I have stopped playing this game tells you how bad it is right now. Because there's no updates, no communication, and no bug patches, and no balance changes. The game is in disarray, and this new update better fix all of that and more, or else it's just not going to work, and this game is just already fucking dead because they gave up on it too soon. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm upset that they've let this game die this bad, this quickly. I am very emotional about it because I love Evil Dead so much. So the fact that they've just demented this game into something it shouldn't be, I can't believe it. I'm sad because balance changes do need to come around every 45 days. And I think that's something that Ubisoft does right. And I mean, even Blizzard did right before Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2 has been pretty sucky for updates, but prior to Overwatch 2, updates came consistently enough, and we got those patch notes in the game every time. But they're not, so these characters have just stayed bad. Henrietta does not feel great to play right now. Her elites feel so weak. Necromancer can be really frustrating to play against as Survivor. David, I know people are going to say that he's really great, but looking back on it retrospectively, he's not as good as everyone thinks he is. He's just not. And he never will be unless, I mean, he could be, but David stayed weak. Leaders are on actually a really good spot. I take that back. Henry and AOD Ash have felt way weaker than Scotty and Mia. Amanda has just been in a bad state ever since she released. She's never been particularly strong. And we haven't seen any balance changes for it. And it's killing the game because balance changes do add more content. They do. They add more characters that feel better to play and play against. So it does add more content because it makes the games better. But when you don't have any of that, you don't have any new content at all, the game is going to bleed so quickly. Like if we look at Dead by Daylight, the game is constantly getting new content, and it was since the beginning of the game. Even when the devs were doing it just out of this is a little fun project, the fuckers who made that one DS game for the Penguin movie, they were adding stuff. And back then, the player base was just as small as Evil Dead, if not smaller. But they kept adding stuff and communicating. We're not seeing that from Evil Dead. They're just giving up, and it's sad. I don't know what else to do, man. I want to play the game, but it's just not enjoyable in the state it's in. And if this new update isn't basically like adding a part 2 to the game, I don't think a lot of the player base is going to instantly return. I think that they've lost a lot of the player base because they didn't take advantage of the initial hype. As well as that, I don't think they've ever done any advertising like ever apart from that free weekend that they fucked up on. That's the only time I think they've done advertising, which feels bad. I really wish they would do more. I really wish they would add a spectator mode. Promise you guys as soon as they do, there's going to be a tournament that I'll host. But until then, it just sucks. Oh, you know what? Actually, one more thing. Hackers. There's still hackers everywhere in Evil Dead, and nothing is being done about it. People are AFKing, rage quitting, and hacking for zero repercussion. Zero repercussion. There's nothing being done about this. And it sucks because it's killing the game. What do you guys think? If you have any more points here, why you think I'm wrong or why you think I'm right, go ahead and throw it down in the comments below. Love to hear your guys' responses. I just wanted to give this rant out here, get my feelings known on the issue, because right now I'm astonished at how bad the game is.